So, neurodiversity in the early years. So, this is going to be the first of a two-part um, webinar where I'm going to be thinking about, as the title says, neurodiversity in the early years. Today, we're going to be thinking about play. And then next week, we're going to be, or next month, sorry, we're going to be thinking about Gestalt language processing, which I've done before, but we're going to do again in a slightly different way. And I know lots of you haven't seen the original Gestalt language processing webinar. So, and there's been a few requests for some more of that. So this is part one of a two-parter of neurodiversity in the early years. Firstly, we'll just go through the housekeeping rules. Cameras on or off, I don't mind. It's the evening time. We're all kind of kicking back and relaxing at home, so cameras off if you prefer. But do please keep yourself on mute at all times, unless you're contributing at the end to the Q&A session. If you have any questions as you go, type them into the chat box, because if you're anything like me, you'll think of a question and then promptly forget it. So pop it in the chat box and I'll have a read of them at the end when we've finished the teaching portion of the webinar. Do come and go as you need. I've got children and pets at home, and I'm sure a lot of you do too. So if they need you, just go. Slides will be emailed to you once you've completed your feedback form at the end of the presentation. So again, don't feel you need to make too many notes, and this recording will go onto YouTube also, so you can always watch that back as well. As you know by now, hopefully these webinars are hosted by our Reach Out Early Years Stronger Practice Hub team, Damon, Victoria, Jess and Lisa. We've got Damon and I believe Lisa on as well this evening, so thank you to them for coming on with us. The Stronger Practice Hubs have been going on now for coming up to 2 years. I think it'll be 2 years, well, 2 years next month that I've been doing webinars with them. And they were originally commissioned by the DFE as part of the COVID-19 recovery package. We've now moved away from that, but we're really happy that the funding has now been extended to March 2029, so we can carry on giving you all this super fully funded training and support. There's 18 Stronger Practice Hubs across the UK, and ours is based at the Barn Nursery School in Greenstead Green. One thing that is open to you all 24/7, another free resource, is the Education Endowment Foundation Early Years Evidence Store. Now, this is a web-based resource where you can go and have a look at all aspects of the EYFS and have a look at the current evidence that underpins the practice. So if you're a new practitioner, you can go and check that what you're doing is evidence-based. But equally, if you've been doing what you're doing for a long time, sometimes, as I say, every month we fall into that trap as long-term practitioners of doing things the way we do it because we've always done it. But evidence changes and things can change dramatically, so it's always good to go and check that what you're doing is actually evidence-based. So do go and check that out. The hub will also offer bespoke support because we know that childcare isn't a one-size-fits-all in terms of either your demographic of children or indeed your setup as a practitioner. So if you have a look at all that's on offer on the website and you think, helpful, but actually I really want something particular, do get in touch with them. They're lovely people and they'll offer you some kind of bespoke support. Here are the QR codes to follow us on socials. And now we get on to the actual topic that you've all come for tonight. So thinking about neurodiversity in the early years and play. So I wanted to start with something to think about. And this is a visual from the NeuroWild social media account. NeuroWild is run by Emma, who's an ADHD, so autistic and ADHD speech and language therapist, and a beautiful illustrator as well. And this is just food for thought. I'm just going to pop it out there for you to think about. So why is this kind of play fine, but this type is or has been unacceptable? I don't think it's a case of something being unacceptable. It's just perhaps that people are unfamiliar with this kind of play. And a lot of practitioners, with the best one in the world, don't really know what to do with a child who's lining things up. So that's hopefully what we're going to think about tonight. Kids learn through play, but that doesn't mean we teach them how to play. All play is valid. We're just not as familiar with neurodivergent play and how to tackle it and what to do. So hopefully tonight I'm going to give you a few ideas on how to work with a child who is playing in a neurodivergent way. Just a quick reminder of what neurodiversity is, because again, I know a lot of you are new to the speech and language webinars. So I'm just going to quickly run through again what neurodiversity is. I love this visual. So neurodiversity essentially is any way in which the brain isn't typical. And this can be a range of conditions. When we think about neurodiversity, most people step straight to ADHD and autism. And yes, they are neurodivergent conditions, but we also have things like dyslexia, dyscalculia, anxiety, DLD, which is developmental language disorder, dyspraxia, Tourette's, OCD. All of these things are neurodivergent conditions. And the reason I really like this slide is because it also has a little undiagnosed at the top as well. If you suspect a child has a neurodivergent condition and you think strategies will be helpful, you do not have to wait to put the strategy, you do not have to wait for a diagnosis to put the strategies in place. If you think it's going to help, it's probably going to help. So that's why the undiagnosed part is a really, really useful bit on this slide. Thinking though, slightly more about your autism spectrum conditions, we used to think that the autism spectrum was linear. And we used to think that children were very, very autistic or a little bit autistic. But we now know that's not the case anymore. So we know really that it's a more spiky profile of presentations, and children vary wildly. So you may have some children who have real trouble with their emotional regulation, but they're actually not particularly sensory. They don't have any particular sensory needs or sensory likes or dislikes. There may be some children who have fiercely strong interests, but they're actually really great communicators. It's a really spiky profile. It's no longer classed as linear. So the saying goes, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, because no two are the same. And again, apologies if you've seen this before, but I think it's so resonant for us all working with our little children. And again, this is done by NeuroWild. Why does any of this matter? So each plant is different. And let's think of our little kids that we're looking after as plants. What works for one plant doesn't work for another plant. So if we assume we have a particular type of plant when we've actually got a different kind, we might accidentally be doing things that are harmful or less desirable to that plant. The more we know about our little plants, the better we can help them thrive. And I'm sure you'll all agree that actually we don't just want the children that are in our care to cope. We actually want them to thrive. And the more we can get to know them and the more we can get to understand what's going on, the more that will happen. So why is play important? So all children play. And it's such an important thing because it works on so much. We have gross and fine motor skills, coordination skills, cognitive skills, imagination, creativity, those social skills, and those kind of emotional regulation and understanding. Play does so much for children. And actually, there is a webinar tomorrow morning if you can make it. Again, fully funded and free, with Ben Kingston Hughes, who is talking about the neurological benefits of play. I've actually shunted a few patients around so that I can come to this as well, because I think it's going to be really interesting. So if you can make that tomorrow, sign up for that one. But going back to thinking about neurodivergent play, so how might that look in your setting? So we may well have the same play in the same way. So often neurodivergent children will play with the same thing in the same way each time. That repetition is very predictable to that child. And if something is predictable, a child has a sense of control and safety and calm. So it's very, very regulating for a child to play in a repetitive way. And examples of that could be the classic lining up toys, grouping them into colours, sorting them out by size. And actually, a lot of people think that isn't play. It is play. It is still play if we interpret it as play. And that predictability is going to keep that child calm and regulated. And if a child is calm and regulated, they're more likely to learn. Many neurodivergent children will look at the details of how toys work rather than playing in the traditional way. So I see many, many children get right down on the floor with a toy car and spin the wheels and hold them right up to their eyes and watch those wheels spin and spin and spin. And many children, again, find that really calming, really repetitive, and really regulating. So you'll often see children spinning wheels, spinning propellers on planes or helicopters, rolling a ball around and just watching the movement. They may be on the move a lot, so they may be sensory seeking with their play as well. Some children enjoy spinning and stimming, but you can have other children who really enjoy just kind of being upside down. Being upside down can be a really, really big one. And I know my daughter spends a lot of time upside down. She'll often just be in a handstand going, doing her thing, but handstanding against a door. And it just feels good. So that again can be another aspect of play. Neurodivergent children often play solo or with adults, and a lot of times this is really, really not well understood. But the reason for this is that other children are unpredictable. As we know, children who are autistic or likely autistic, they feel better when there is a plan and there is predictability. Other children are not predictable. They're going to start changing the game. And when that happens, this can very, very much upset a child who is autistic or neurodivergent. If we play on our own, we protect ourselves from this. If we play with adults, we're protecting ourselves a little bit. So adults are generally more flexible. And adults are generally easier to pull back to my template if it's going a little bit awry, whereas other children, not so much. So playing with adults or playing on our own protects us from the game going off center and going off the rails and being dysregulating and causing some kind of real upset. Now, Mrs. Speechy P, who, if you've been to a few of my webinars before, you'll know that I think she's amazing. So she's an autistic speech and language pathologist in America, and I highly recommend you follow her social media pages on Facebook and or Instagram. She's done some lovely slides on this that go a little bit more into detail. So she's talking again about the sensory play. It can be movement based, so we're running or jumping, crashing into things. That sensory play may be really visual. So again, like I said, it may be getting eye level with toys. So as well as the predictability of the movement, we have the sensory input of having it right up to our face. We may find that children find like an electronic toy that says certain things when you press a button. They may press the button over and over and over again because the sound of that sentence or that phrase or the noise it makes is really, really calming for them. They may really enjoy texture-based play or absolutely hate it. Tends to be one or the other. And there may be mouthing items or smelling items as well, even in children who you think are sort of too old to do that or past the developmental stage where you would expect that. As we've said, they may prefer to play alone or only with familiar people or only with adults. And they may well prefer parallel play over interactive play. So I worked with a child who actually couldn't even bear to have, she's a little autistic girl, couldn't even bear to have another child at the same table as her. And one of her early targets was even just tolerating somebody nearby. So it can be quite a marked solo play. And again, I think the temptation as practitioner is to go, oh, they're playing on their own, they must be sad and lonely, where actually being on their own may be actually the best thing for this child. So I think you have to think to yourself, is this child playing alone because actually it's a really good thing for them? Question it before you try and get somebody else in on the play. A lot of autistic children will engage in creative play, but they're creating things that they've seen either on sort of YouTube or TV shows or movies, or about things that they have seen parents or therapists do. It may be a really, really highly specific and really close imitation. It may be that you can absolutely see yourself in what this child is acting out in front of you, or it may be more loose, but they are often copying something that they have seen. And as we've said, many autistic children have a strong plan. They know exactly how the play is going to happen. They know exactly how everything's going to be lined up, exactly how everything is going to be set out in their mind, and exactly what everybody is going to do or say in this interaction. The problem is they don't often tell anybody what's in their brain and why. And then when other children come along and do their spontaneous things, this can be really, really upsetting to them. So you have to be watching these interactions. And if a child goes into some kind of dysregulation, you can sort of try and pull back and think, right, what was happening here and what might have triggered this? It may just be that somebody has gone wildly off plan and the child is finding that very, very difficult to handle. Again, they may play with very non-traditional toys or toys in non-traditional ways. So we've got, light switches, spoons, sticks and rocks can be the best toys for children with autism and neurotypical children to some extent, but you tend to find there's more of a fixation from the neurodivergent children. They may try and find toys with similar features. They'll, again, like I've said, turn cars upside down to watch wheels spin. Dumping and cleaning up is a really big one. So I have many children in my therapy room who will dump the toys out of the baskets, put them back in again, and then dump them again. And that is their play. Again, they may organize things and they enjoy setting up scenes. And then stopping. Setting up the scene can actually be such a big joy giver for neurodivergent children. So let's go back to this original slide then and think about when you have a child in your setting who is doing the play where you think, oh, okay, I recognize that this isn't neurotypical play, but I don't know what to do. And we've had several Q&A sessions in previous sessions where people have gone, yeah, I just don't know what to do or what to say if a child is lining things up. So hopefully we can get some familiarity going now so that you actually think, I know what to do here. So we need to think about what the priorities are for neurodivergent children. Another brilliant, brilliant illustration from Emma at NeuroWild. So the most important things are well-being, health and safety. Once they are catered for, everything starts to fall into place. Following from that, we're thinking about creating a positive neurodivergent identity. So not trying to change the child's presentation into something a bit more neurotypical that we're more comfortable with. We're also thinking about having a positive relationship with learning, but not at the expense of a child's sort of well-being. We need to make good, authentic connections with the children, and with that will come that comfort and joy that they will experience. Really, at the bottom of the tree at the moment is school or setting attendance and academics and sort of traditional learning. We're really working on that safety, regulation, connection, and joy. Okay. And part of that is accepting how a child plays and not trying to change it. So when we're playing with a neurodivergent child, we are never, never, never trying to change their play to a style with which we're more familiar. What we are trying to do is build connection and regulation together. So simply by joining in, we're validating that child's play. We're going to build joint attention and engagement as we go. Okay. But I realize that for some practitioners, they know that's what they have to do, but they just don't always know how to do it in the best way. So what you're really doing is bringing language to the activity. Okay, and you can bring language to anything. And I thought I'd try and find sort of one of the most, I guess, the driest thing that I could think of, which was like just a child turning a light switch on and off. So there's so much that you can model here. So light on, light off. Let's reach that light switch. So again, thinking about, for those of you who know about it, Gestalt language processing, starting a sentence with let's is really key, and we'll learn more about that next time. Comment on what you're doing together. This is so much fun. I mean, you might not think it's fun, but we're building engagement, we're building connection, you're validating how they're playing. This is so much fun. Okay. Jack's turn, my turn, Jack's turn, my turn. So again, working on that turn taking if they're able to. Oh, the switch is so high. So again, you're getting some positional language in there. I can see you turning on the light. I can see you turning off the light. It's my turn to turn off the light. This light is so bright. So there are so many things that you can talk about when you're turning on a light switch. And actually just look at the picture, the light switch is square, the light switch is white. So there's so much that you can start to model even through something like that. And what that will do is this child will go, oh, he or she gets it. We are having fun. This is great. I feel validated. I feel seen. I feel relaxed. I don't feel challenged in any way. They're joining in this play and this is great and I'm ready to learn. And from there, each time you do that and the play becomes more affirming, the child's going to feel more comfortable and more ready to learn. Bringing language to lines, because this is something that people always bring up. What do I do if someone's lining up cars? So we're going to start by thinking about the adjectives that you can use to positively encourage this line. This line is so long, it's so colourful, it's so neat, it's huge, it's wiggly, it's impressive, it's amazing. There's so much you can say about a line that will make that child feel like they've really accomplished something with their line. Let's add some more cars. So again, more cars, great phrase. Anything with more in is really useful. But you're also going, I think this line is so great, I want a piece of this. And that's lovely for a child to hear. I want to make a line too. You may have a child where they don't actually want you to get right in on their play, but you can make a line of your own cars next to them, or you can make a line of something else next to them. You're still indirectly validating their line building. You're going, oh, that line's great. I'd like to build a line as well. We are enjoying this moment together, but I'm not kind of muscling in if you're not ready for that yet. I wonder how big this line can get. So again, thinking about that, hypothesizing how big you can make the line. You look so happy making the line. So not only are you getting some basic emotions vocabulary in there, you're actually sort of, again, like I say, validating that play. There are so many cars. And if you're at the point where you have got a child who is using some spoken language and you want to model some positional language. The green car is at the front, the red car is at the back of the line. It's always our responsibility to think about what this child's targets are and bring the language to what they're doing. Okay. So if I'm working with a child and I know that prepositions or positional language are their targets, I have to look at that line and go, right, what prepositions can I, as the adult, model to this line? I'm not going to go and change what they're doing to fit my agenda. I have to bring the agenda to the activity. And I think that's where we've gone wrong over the years is we've gone, you don't want to do that, you want to do this. And so the next slide, we're going to think about some sort of phrases to avoid. So what you're not trying to do is change their play. So how about we make a car park? No, we don't want to make a car park because actually we're not doing that. We're making a line. And you coming in and going, I don't like your line, I'd like us to do a car park instead, is obviously sort of going, no, we're not validating that play, we'll do something else. These cars should be driving around. So again, a lot has changed in the 20 years that I've been doing this, and the amount of times I think back to the lines that I have deconstructed to try and drive the cars around, to go, hey, this is much more fun. And these children have worked hard or played hard making these lines. And then for someone to come and deconstruct the line and do something different with them, it was really heartbreaking and quite dysregulating for them. Oh, let's get the garage out and drive the cars around the garage. You, as a neurotypical person or as a practitioner, might think that would be more fun. And actually, yeah, potentially there's a bit more language in there. There's a bit more stuff to do, but it's not what the child was doing and it's not how they play. Any sentence that starts instead of a line or instead of what you're doing, we need to get rid of straight away. So instead of a line, we can make the cars race, or hey, it would be even better if we, because again, you're saying your play isn't good enough, but my play is better. So anytime you are with the child, you need to be thinking what you can bring to the play without changing it. And that's really, really key. The other things you need to think about are keeping the environment as calm as you can to keep the child regulated. Now, I know that's not always easy when you've got lots and lots of children in the setting, and it's not always going to work. But if you can, all the better for it. Playing without expectation is absolutely crucial. So never, never, never put pressure on a child to talk to you, interact with you, or play directly with you. If they do, great. If they don't, that's fine. If the child isn't talking, you bring the language to them. Again, if they're not interacting, find a way to share the moment together in a slightly more distant way and play indirectly with them. Enjoy just being together. So for some children, like the little girl I talked about earlier, letting anyone into the same space at all doing anything is significant and a really big win. So it may even be sometimes that you just sit near the child while they play and you're doing some of your own work or you're playing with something different and you gradually edge in closer and closer over time. So just enjoy being together. I think as soon as you put an expectation on a child that they have to talk or they have to interact or they have to play, then the play isn't really play anymore. The play has become led by you and there's an agenda that I have to follow, and that can become quite upsetting. And when it is time to move on, think about your transitions. So neurodivergent children, as I'm sure you all know, can find moving from one activity to the next really, really tricky. So you need to be giving plenty of warning when it's approaching the time to end the activity that you're doing. So if lunchtime is coming up, then you need to give plenty of warnings. You use visuals, gestures, and everything to support that message. Some children have a ritual to help them move on. So some of the children in my therapy sessions, so I do a 30-minute therapy session, and some children physically cannot leave my session until they have tidied up. So I need to build that time into my session. Okay, that is my responsibility, because if I don't, that child is going to leave, basically being dragged away from the activity and leave on a real low, very dysregulated, probably screaming, crying. And as the adult, it is our responsibility to ensure that we can help that child transition as successfully as possible. And if transitioning for them means tidying everything away first, then we need to build that time in to that transition, because I think that's really very often people go, the child, this child finds it really hard to move from one activity to the other. And I think it's because we think that if a child is doing something for 20 minutes, it should be 20 minutes of play, not 15 minutes of play and 5 minutes of tidying up. I think sometimes people think that we're shortchanging a child out of 5 minutes of play. But actually, if that 5 minutes helps the rest of the day go more smoothly, then it's 5 minutes well spent. I'd rather have 15 minutes of play and 5 minutes of tidying up, and then the next activity goes smoothly, than 20 minutes of play and an hour to 90 minutes of I can't cope with anything because I'm so dysregulated because that transition was too quick. So just have a think about noticing how a child transitions from one activity to the next, and if there's anything specific that they need to do, and ask the parents as well. At home, is there anything that they need to do before they move on to the next activity? And these can also be eating based, so snack time based or lunchtime based. It may be that they have to take their plate to a particular place before they can go and play. You need to make sure you're building in time for that, because it's so much more beneficial for the child. If you want to find out more, these social media accounts are brilliant. So Mrs. Speechy P I've talked about. Speech Dude and Sensory SLP are actually a couple of American speech and language pathologists. Speech Dude works with neurodivergent young people, so sort of secondary school, high school students, and Sensory SLP works with the preschoolers. So actually between them, they're such an amazing duo, and they do some great training and great stuff on their socials as well. Neuro Wild, who I've shown you lots of illustrations about today. Neuro D, early years teacher, she's great. She does a lot of things about sort of neurodivergent early years stuff, as the name kind of gives the clue of. And Meaningful Speech is probably a little bit more for the next one, but she's an expert. Alex is an expert on Gestalt language processing. So these are sort of six. If you only follow 6 Instagram accounts about sort of neurodivergence, I'd make it these 6 in my opinion. Coming up next, so October's webinar is, as I've said before, Gestalt language processing. We also have a webinar coming up in the middle of September for those of you who are newer to the locality, to us, newer localities to the hub, where we're just talking about typical speech and language development as well. That was the very, very first one that we ever ran like 2 years ago, but we're going to rerun it for people who are newer to the speech and language webinars so that